Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. I was on vacation last week, some of you know. I was in northern Michigan. John and I were visiting some old friends of mine and of his, and Saturday afternoon my phone alerted me to the message of the shooting in El Paso. Just like a punch to the gut, you know, and I'm sure many of you felt the same thing. And so I prayed and we talked, and I composed a prayer for our Facebook and talked to my friends there, and just there was a heaviness. And then, of course, waking up the next morning and seeing that there was yet another shooting in Dayton, it's bewildering and infuriating and so sad. And I wanted to be here. Not because you needed me, because you were in good hands. Thank you, Reverend Karen and Reverend Jean Marie and Mindy, everyone for being the ministers of this church. But I needed to be with my people. I needed to be with my arms around people who won't give in to despair and hopelessness. I really considered changing the message today because we're in a recovery and restoration series, and it's really about a personal journey, right, of recovering from those events and those times and those addictions in life where we're not in the knowing of our oneness, and we have the experience of separation and brokenness. And how do we recover and come back into the truth? How do we restore? There's a great scripture that says that God will restore the years that the locust has eaten. It's an ancient reference, but you can feel the power of that there's something, no matter how far down you have gotten in life, something wants to be called forward. And the more I thought about it, I thought, no, this is the message I want to give today, because even though it's really intended to be about an individual and a family journey of recovery, our nation, we're insane. There is something so off in our culture, and we need recovery, we need healing. I'm going to get back to that in a moment. I do want to start with a talk about, I'm calling today's message, The Truth About Addiction, and I gave a talk very similar about 15 years ago at my former community in Dallas, and for that, I was new at this at that point, and I spent weeks. Then I had lots of time between sermons. I had more time, and I had done all this research and PowerPoint, and I had found all the data about the effects of addiction on our culture, and I started to do that research again and updating it, and I thought, I don't need to do all that, but I want to share some of it with you. That if you only looked at the deaths in the United States of America due to alcohol addiction, legal prescription drug addiction, and illegal drugs, the effects are staggering. And then when you add in those deaths caused by nicotine, tobacco addiction, it's almost 1 million a year die in our nation alone because of chemical addiction. And numbers, we can't even hold what 1 million is in our mind, so here's another way to just kind of get a sense of it. It's like a fully loaded 747 passenger jet crashing every 4 hours, every day, every night. Can you feel now what that, when one thing like that happens, we're shocked and we're disheartened, we're dismayed, and imagine it's happening every 4 hours, another and another, 400 more people. And this is not news to you. You've experienced it in your families and your friends. I know you have. The statistics also show us that 1 out of every 2 people has alcoholism in their immediate family. A brother, yourself, a parent. We know what this is like. We know the devastation that addiction causes. And then that's not even to mention the non-chemical addictions, the sex and love addiction, the spending and debt addictions, the food addictions, so many others. And of course, workaholism, which is the one we celebrate in our culture. That when we see a workaholic, oh, yeah. But if you have been married to a workaholic, you know the devastation of the absent partner and parent. What is it? What is it that drives it? Well, before that, I want to tell you that the reason I want to talk about this and how it relates to what we're experiencing as a culture and as a nation is like that song Boris was just singing. You know, that call me out upon the water. That comes from that beautiful story in the Gospels where there's a storm and Peter sees Jesus walking across the waves to him. And then Peter is like, oh, I didn't know we could walk on water. Nobody told me that. That was not in the manual. He said, Master, call me out. Call me, and I'll come. And he stepped out of the boat onto the water. Now, usually that story is told to show he didn't have very much faith, because when he started looking at the storm and the waves, he sank, right? But do you remember what he did next? I feel like I have a lot of reverb on my voice, at least in the monitor. Maybe we can correct that. That he reached out to Jesus. That's key. There will be times in your life where it looks like the surface you're standing upon will not hold you. You don't know how to be here. You don't know what this is. And it's not supporting you. You have come to the end of your human skills and knowing and wisdom, and you don't know how to go forward. You don't know how to live life here. And in that moment, what faith offers to us is that there is a way forward. There is a power greater than you are. And it's offering a hand to get you through this. You see, we are more than these bodies. We are more than our current experience and knowing. There is an infinite power and intelligence, which I call God because that's the biggest word I know. I stole that from Michael Dowd. But there is this power. It's not just a guy in the sky. It's infinite love and intelligence and power. And it knows how to heal, how to restore, how to evolve. And the reason why I'm qualified to stand here and tell you that this is the truth is that I have experienced it. 20 years ago today, I was on my knees. Not from prayer of surrender, but from being sick, from alcohol. Where I could not get through, not even a day, a morning without a drink. I experienced the devastation of addiction firsthand, and my life was not working, and it was hopeless by my human reckoning. Because I had tried. I'd used up every bit of my trying. Everything I could think of, everything of course, I took it on as a moral failure. I'm a shameful being, all that we do in addiction. And it wasn't like I needed the right skill set or approach. I needed a power bigger than me, the infinite power of God. And on November 18th of 1999, my day of grace, I fully surrendered to that power in a room with bad coffee and steps on the wall, and haven't had a drink since. Not because of anything I did. Well, thank you, but it's not my power. I did some stuff. I did some stupid steps I didn't want to do, and I did what they told me, and I went to some stupid meetings I didn't want to go to. And yet, all that God needed was my willingness. And then that power that we all rest upon, that will allow us to walk upon the uncertain waters of our own lives and our times. It's there. So I'm here to tell you it's real, and I am living testimony that there is a power that will get us through what we're going through as a culture, as a people, as a nation. It's real. That's how it relates. So whatever you are currently experiencing in your personal life where you need a power greater than you are, it's there. And if it is addiction, I recommend you get help. I don't recommend, I'm telling you. I don't do a lot of preaching like that, you know that? But I'm here to tell you, you can't do it on your own. You need help. And I'm not saying the 12 steps are the only way, it's just the way that I was directed to and it worked for me. But you got to get help. You have to tell somebody what's going on and get some help from someone who has walked the road before you. And they can share what we say in the 12 steps is our experience, strength, and hope. And that's what we want to have today is hope. Because whether you are experiencing the direct or the indirect expression of alcoholism today, you're still going to go through things that you don't know how to do, that your human skills and knowing will not get you to the next place you need to be. And I feel like that's where we are as a people. And we're in pain. We're struggling. We got back a day late because of a plane mechanical thing, and on Thursday was my first day back in the office, and there had been a request that the staff just have a safe place to gather and express what was going on with us around the shootings. And I'm just going to tell you there were a lot of curse words. There were a lot of tears and some laughter, but there was no judgment. There was only love and support, and it's what I needed. And they'll tell you I wasn't like the minister with all the answers in that moment. I shared my fear, my heartbreak. Again. You know, when Sandy Hook happened, we had a room full of dead babies, first graders. And we didn't stop. And here it is again. What is this? How do we deal with suffering is really the question in this world. And I will tell you that sometimes unity gets a bad reputation because we just say, well, just affirm the truth. And it doesn't work if we don't actually look at what's happening in the level of condition. My mentor and my teacher, Reverend Dr. Petra Welda, she taught it to me this way. What we need is spiritual double vision. You have to look at the condition, see what is. We have a problem with violence in our culture. That's what is. And then you see through it to a spiritual reality. This is not the truth of who we are as human beings. This is a false idea. Some people, somehow in our culture get the idea that violence is the answer, and it is not. Amen? Amen. And so our job is to see a deeper truth beneath the condition. And I want to go fix it, don't you? I mean, that's the thing, and I don't know how. I'm at the end of my human knowing. But as I said, there is a greater wisdom and a greater power. And not only can we use it, but it can use us. As I was thinking about what story, I've really been loving teaching from story lately. I wanted to share with you. There are two from the Bible, one from the Christian scriptures and one from the Hebrew scriptures, that talk about this idea of forgetting oneness that happens with addiction, that happens with these things that we're going through in our culture, and how we come back to it. And the first one was the prodigal son. You remember that? That the father's story that Jesus used to teach, that there were two sons, and one wanted his inheritance, and he went off to a far land and squandered it. And when he was at his bottom, as we would say in the 12 steps, he had hit rock bottom, he came to himself and returned home. The story, as Eckhart Tolle, the author of The Power of Now, says, it's all of our spiritual journey is the prodigal's journey. It's from unconscious oneness through apparent separation to conscious oneness. That's the journey. And those painful bottom moments, those times when we have lost the ability to see forward, that where we don't see how we can stand on this watery surface, those are the times where we're in the apparent separation. It looks like there's not enough money to do to pay the bills. It looks like my body is not going to be able to get me where I need to go. It looks like everything is over. And those are the moments that it's an opening, an invitation to return to oneness, but consciously, to choose to live from the spiritual truth. So, there, I guess I did preach on it. I didn't mean to, but that wasn't the story of what I decided or was calling to me today. It's actually from the Hebrew Scripture. It's the first of the poetic writings in the Hebrew Scripture. It's the book of Job. Amazing story. Now, in the story, there's one chapter in the beginning that kind of tells it all, and then there are 41 chapters of talking about it. And then there's the chapter at the end that tells how it ends. So I'm just going to focus on those 41 chapters of talking about it now. I'm going to synopsize those. Here are the characters we're dealing with in this story. And I apologize to my friends of the Jewish faith that it's not spoken. It's the name of God is never spoken in Judaism because we can't pretend to have God small enough to fit in our tongues. But the letters are YWYH, Yahweh, is the way we would say it sometimes in Christianity. It's interpreted to be the Almighty, would be a good English translation of it. But for the purpose of this story, it's not the infinite power and intelligence that we teach in unity. It's a character. It's a part of God that we're going to be using to play a role for us in this story. Another character is Satan. Now, in unity, we don't teach that there is an actual spiritual power for evil. It's not true. It's just an absence of light. So there is no personified being that is the devil. So what Charles Fillmore says about this, I almost said Ernest Holmes, you caught that right. What Charles Fillmore says about this is that the Hebrew for Satan, it means literally the adversary. And Charles teaches us that it's actually that part of our own consciousness that argues against oneness. The part of our own mind that says, God ain't going to get you out of this. That is what we're speaking of as Satan in this story. Got it? The third character is actually those three characters. We'll go with Job is the third character, and I'll tell you more mostly about him. But then he has three friends. Or in a properly English, the way we'd say it now, they were actually frenemies. Do you know that word? His consolers during his time of doubt. So I'm going to put all three of them together as one character. Here's the story. Job was a righteous man. Actually, before that. God and Satan were talking. And God says, hey, what's going on? Satan says, oh, nothing much. Just wandering back and forth on the planet. And God says, hey, check out my dude Job. Job, he loves me, he's righteous, he is a good, solid bro. And Satan says, yeah, you mean that healthy, rich guy with a great family and all the livestock? Yeah, he's a good guy. That's because you put a fence around him. You took that down, now he wouldn't be so righteous. God says, sounds like a challenge. You're on. And so in the story, these are characters. God says to Satan, you can take away all of his worldly goods, but do not touch his body. The next part of the story, Job has a really, really, really bad day. A servant comes saying, bandits have set upon your sheep. Oh, I forgot to say he had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and something else that I can't remember right now. But he was loaded in ancient Hebrew times. Rich guy. And a servant comes running up to him and says, bandits have set upon your flocks and your sheep have been stolen. They killed all of your shepherds. I alone survived. Bad day. Another servant comes, fire from heaven has descended upon your camels. They are all consumed. All of your servants were killed except for me, who came to tell you the story, because that's how we have a story. And he said... And Job was like, really bad day. I don't remember exactly what happened. And another thing happened to the oxen. And then the worst of all news came. Job had 10 kids, 7 sons and 3 daughters, and they were also well off and they were lovely people, and they liked to celebrate with feast in one another's homes on their birthdays. And the eldest son had a birthday and invited his siblings in, and a great wind came and collapsed his home, and they all died. And the servant came and said, I alone survived this tragedy to tell you. And Job found himself in one of those watery places where the ground no longer supported him. And he fell to the ground. He tore his clothes, and he wept, and he raged. But he did not curse God. He did not blame the divine power which had given him so much. He did not blame God for taking it away. And God turns to Satan and says, "See, righteous dude." And Satan says, "Well, yeah, but you didn't let me get to the body. You give me that, and he is done for." God said, "All right, you're on. Do anything, but don't kill him." Now, this part of the story, you know how kids are kind of drawn to like gory, gross stories? I was like that, and so I apologize for the squeamish in the audience, but he got boils all over his body. And it said he would scrape them with pieces of pottery and then put ashes on them. Does not sound like a good, healthy cure. But they didn't have MedStop back in the day, so he had to do what he did. But you get the idea. Everything was lost that he cared about, and he was in physical pain and misery. Now, the wife is a very minor character. I don't get the sense they had a real healthy relationship because she was not really listed as one of his prized possessions or, the treasures in his life. And the only time she appears in the story, she comes and says, "This sucks. If I were you, I would curse God and die." Not a real supportive spouse, that Job's wife. And he said, "No, God hasn't done this to me." And then the frenemies come in. And for the 41 chapters, they each talk about, well, you must have done something bad because God's punishing you. Clearly, you have sinned. And Job was steadfast in his integrity. He said, "I have not. I don't know why this is happening, and it is awful. But I have not sinned against God." And one after one, they accuse, support. And he says, "No." And he gives voice to his bewilderment and his rage and his sorrow. He says, "It's better that I had been born from my mother's womb and carried immediately to the grave than to have experienced what I'm experiencing." If you have never experienced one of those moments in your life, God bless you. I have. I've had those moments of my life. Why was I born? It's so painful. And he still did not curse God. Until chapter 41, something happens. Out of a windstorm, God speaks and has a great speech. His scriptwriter is so good. What Yahweh says, the Almighty, is, "Who are you to complain, Job? How much do you really know about the way it all works, Job? Were you there when I raised the mountains into being? Do you see the doe as she has her fawn in the forest? Do you know that? I do." And it's a lot of questions like that where God just says, "You don't have the complete picture, my righteous dude. You don't see everything that's happening. But there is an intelligence and a wisdom that weaves all together for good. You can't see it, but I am it." And Job said, "You're right. I'm sorry." And in that moment of being broken open, to recognizing the limits of his human knowing and doing, he came to his knees, not in anguish or in shame or pain, but in surrender to a power greater than he was. And as all good stories have a happy ending, I don't know that all of them do, but this one certainly does. In the realm of 14,000 sheep were restored to him, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen. Everything was doubled. He had come home to who he was, the blessings of oneness restored to him. He had 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. It says his daughters were the most beautiful in the whole land. And he got to live another 140 years and saw 4 generations of his grandchildren. I can't promise you that. But I do tell you that what's on the other side of the pain that we are currently in is freedom and wholeness like we have never known. Because that has been my experience. And I know it's true for me. I know it's true for you. I know it's true for your family, and I know it's true for this nation. My little daughter was here on Friday and Saturday, and a couple things occurred to me. And just being with her, we went down to the brown water of Galveston, and it was wonderful. On Friday. It was awesome. I'm telling you, we forget how really great it is, but it was hot on Friday. And that water felt great. And to feel the breeze and sit under an umbrella and read a book, it was so beautiful. And she was out in the water with one of her moms, and I was under the umbrella, and I was reading, and I looked up, and I saw this beautiful little round brown girl, about 3 years old, little tummy and a little bathing suit, just delighted at that brown water. And I just felt, well, this is an interesting thing happened, because I suddenly saw my mom as a 3-year-old little brown girl with brown hair and brown curls. I thought, what does that mean? And then it kind of came to me, maybe there's more for me to learn from that gift that came in that moment, but that innocence is in all of us. We all still carry that child that doesn't know about mass shootings or addiction or doesn't know about any of that, just knows the joy in a moment. That's in us. But that's sort of that unconscious oneness and freedom. What's being called for is a conscious oneness and freedom. And the other thing that happened was yesterday we went to the Natural Science Museum, and I've been there many times before, but never the butterfly exhibit, and oh my gosh, is it magic, restorative. Go spend some time with a room full of butterflies. You'll feel better. And then it was just great. It was crowded, but it wasn't terribly crowded. And then I remember I was in there was an exhibit of prize-winning nature photography, and it was pretty crowded in there, and lots of people. And I noticed the families, every color, every configuration of possible gender and children, and some parents in wheelchairs, some children in wheelchairs, and there was even one child who couldn't see, and so his mom was describing the pictures. And you know what? We felt safe together. There was joy and inspiration, and I couldn't feel the fear anywhere, even I was looking for it. But I want to tell you that the best of humanity is still here. In times of deep pain and tragedy, we can think that it's over and it's hopeless. It's not. It's still here. We can't give in to hopelessness. About 10 days ago, we lost the great Toni Morrison, first African-American woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. Just an amazing soul. Not spiritual in the sense that we talk about it here, but she had this ability to see the world in all of its pain and trauma and not lose hope and not lose dignity. Read her books if you don't know them. I don't know if you know this. She has a Houston connection. She taught at Texas Southern for a couple of years over in the 3rd Ward. This is from Toni Morrison. I know that the world is bruised and bleeding, and though it is important not to ignore its pain, it is also critical to refuse to succumb to its malevolence. Like failure, chaos contains information that can lead to knowledge, even wisdom. Things are broken. There is a soul sickness in our culture, in some of our families. We cannot give in to hopelessness. There is something wanting to be born in us now, and this is the way. This community has some role to play. I feel absolutely sure of it. I don't know what that is. I don't know how we're a part of the healing. I just know that that's true. It's happening on an individual basis, and collectively, God is calling us to something. I'm not going to step into politics, but if you're called to, I support you. Whatever is on your conscience, in your heart to bring into this world, yes, you bring it. Because I believe God will only work to our good. Please don't give up. We are better than we know. There is so much hope. I love you. God bless you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.